What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. Today we're doing our weekly budget build on Goro, and Satoru. These commanders paired together are extremely interesting, right? All we have to do is make sure our creatures have entered the battlefield this turn and we get a free 5/5 dragon. Sometimes up to 3 5/5 dragons, right? Because as long as we're dealing combat damage to each of our opponents, boom, we get 15 power out of nowhere. Additionally, this guy has the ability to give our creatures haste tacked onto him, so he gets rid of most of that hurdle for us. So building this deck was pretty simple. All I had to do was split it up into two categories. One, we have our creatures that go ahead and create tokens. We have equipment that can give our creatures myriad. We also have artifacts that we can imprint onto our best creatures to make sure we can have them keep entering the battlefield. The other half of the deck is just creatures with really good enter the battlefield effects, right? Because they're going to enter the battlefield, we're going to get multiple tokens on them. We have Encore creatures, we have Blitz creatures, we have myriad creatures, so let's just get into the deck tech. Why not start out with our best creatures in the deck? We have Siege Gang Commander. This guy's going to enter the battlefield and we're going to get 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. If we can go ahead and make this effect happen multiple times, not only are we going to get a massive board of tokens, but we're going to be able to set off our commander's ability, netting us those giant dragons. Krinko Mob Boss. This guy fits the criteria perfectly, right? We tap him, he creates more tokens, and then next turn he's going to create even more tokens. Those tokens will have technically entered the battlefield that turn, and then we just give him haste and attack our opponents, netting us at least 3 dragons. Legion Warboss is just going to go ahead and create us a 1/1 goblin creature token at the beginning of each combat, which is really useful. Squee Dubious Monarch, another creature that can trigger our commander every turn, because whenever he attacks, he's going to add a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking with him. Beetleback Chief. This is one that we're going to want to imprint on or equip a Blade of Selves to, right? Because whenever he enters the battlefield, you get 2 red goblin creature tokens. So this is one of the cards in the deck that has the potential to net us 3 dragons the turn it comes down. Goblin Instigator, just a guy that comes down with another goblin, right? Impulsive Pilferer. This is another card in the deck that can net us 3 dragons, and it's going to get us some treasure tokens while we do it. Jaxus. I'm really excited to throw this card onto the battlefield and just start creating tokens of Siege Gang Commander and Beetleback Chief just to throw at our opponents. If this guy sticks on the battlefield, he really turbocharges the deck. Felden of the Third Path, another one of the cards that whenever our key pieces die, he's just going to bring them back and start triggering our commander once again. Amphin Mutineer. Not only is this guy really efficient removal, but again, this is one of those cards that can net us those 3 dragons. Gut True Soul Zealot. Okay, I'm a little embarrassed to think that skull on the top of his head, I thought that was his head the whole time, but now I'm seeing that it's just a goblin wearing a skull hat. Moving on, this card's amazing in the deck because it's going to sacrifice our useless creatures that attacked last turn and trade them up for a 4/1 black skeleton with menace. Altoro Survivors. I'm really excited about this card because look at that ability. Not only is this guy equipped with Myriad and Trample, but whenever he attacks, you're going to get +X+0, where X is the number of lands defending player controls. So he's definitely going to get through. You're definitely going to get 15 power off the board for your commander. And then we're going to have a way to bring him back with either a Mimic Vat or Soul's Foundry to make sure we just keep bringing him onto the battlefield, triggering our commander's ability over and over again. Ghoul Caller Gisa, another card that's amazing, and you might be like, well, aren't these all like pretty low to the ground creatures? We're creating 5/5 dragons. Boom, you can add 10 power to the board, sacrificing one of those dragons. Go ahead and suit these guys up with haste, fling them at your opponent, and create more dragons, rinse and repeat next turn, and your opponents are going to hate you. Elemental Mastery, another really good card to suit onto one of your dragons, and just create a lot of little 1/1 elementals that can go ahead and trigger your commander off for more dragons. Tetsuko Umezawa. This is going to make all of our 1/1s unblockable, so our 1/1s in the deck will get through guaranteed, and it's just going to make the deck more consistently trigger our commander. Lagamos, another card that can really consistently trigger our commander, and it can search us any card in our library if enough creatures died. Which remember, all of these tokens we're creating, most of them don't go away after we create them, right? They stay on the battlefield, so they're just going to turn into fodder or just extra combat damage. Sling Gang Lieutenant. Not only is this another card that can trigger our commander up to 3 times the turn it enters the battlefield, but it's a really good useful way to get rid of all of those useless goblins after we've used them to create our dragons. Cedrus. This is a perfect late game card to bring all of our key pieces back from the graveyard to the battlefield to create more dragons. Blade of Selves. Equip this to your best creature that creates a lot of goblin tokens whenever it attacks, and you've got yourself an instant board state, and it can trigger your commander up to 2 times, right? Soul's Foundry, not as good as Blade of Selves, but does something really similar. Mimic Vat, again similar to Blade of Selves and Soul's Foundry, but not as good. Moving on, we have a small Goad strategy, Kodor Doomscourge. If we can get this on a Blade of Selves or a Mimic Vat and just start blinking him onto the battlefield every turn, our opponents are going to kill themselves while we kill them. It's going to be perfect. It's also going to make them wide open on our turn so we can start making those massive dragons. Goblin Spymaster. This is going to give each of our opponents a 1/1 goblin that's going to make all of the rest of their creatures attack. Notably, it's not very good if they're sacrificing their creatures, but I still think it's worth an include if it gets a couple of our opponents. Biden of Thassa. Not only is this going to draw us a lot of cards, but it can make all of our opponent's creatures attack. Notably, they can attack us, but hey, as long as they're open, we'll have a bunch of big dragons to block. Speaking of dragons, Furcrag Cunning Instigator. I'm a really big fan of this guy in the deck. Whenever those massive dragons we're creating are attacking, we're going to go ahead and get to goad our opponent's creatures, and then we're going to get card advantage off of those goaded creatures, and Furcrag's going to get massive. This can catch our opponents off guard and really make sure our deck is churning and working the way we need it to. Now, with all of this violence going on, we will want our shields up, right? So Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, is going to be perfect. Whenever our opponents attack us, unless they spend a ton of mana, we're going to get a 3/3 blocker. So that's going to be pretty good, and honestly, it's just going to incentivize them not to attack us at all. Death Tyrant. Whenever one of our attacking creatures dies, we're going to get a 2/2 zombie, which is really good because we can just use that to block, and it's going to keep the numbers on our board relatively the same. We run a few other niche cards in the deck like Goblin Matron. This can get us our Krinko, which is going to be really good. Chainer Nightmare Adept. Not only is this going to recur our creature cards from the graveyard, but they're going to have haste, so that's going to be really useful. Ogre Battle Driver. Yes, our commander gives haste, but this guy's just so much more efficient. Not only is he going to give our creatures +2/+2, but he's going to give them haste on top of that. Whisper Blood Liturgist. This is just going to let us sacrifice 2 of our useless creatures that have already entered the battlefield and attacked to get something that hasn't. Let's move on to card advantage. We have Dark Dweller Oracle. We can use this guy to sacrifice our useless creatures to go ahead and exile the top card of our library, and we'll be able to play it that turn. Grim Horospex and Midnight Reaper are going to let us draw a card whenever one of our non-token creatures dies. Smothering Abominations is also going to be really good in the deck because while we do have to sacrifice the creatures to draw a card, we can use it on our tokens, so that makes it worth the include. Garna Bloodfist of Keld. I really like her in the deck because not only can she draw you cards whenever your attacking creatures die, but you can just sacrifice your non-attacking creatures to go ahead and deal damage straight to our opponent's face. Disciple of Bolas, I included this one because sacrificing one of those 5/5 dragons to draw 5 cards is going to be really good. We also run Coastal Piracy and Reconnaissance Mission. That way we can draw cards whenever those creatures are dealing combat damage to our opponents, which is the goal anyway. Then we have some early card draw options with Faithless Looting and Read the Bones, just solid staples. Skull Clamp is also going to make an appearance. It's one of the most expensive cards in the deck, but honestly it's worth the include with the amount of cards you're going to get off of this card. Alright, let's move on to the ramp. I went really fast with the ramp because honestly this is a really aggressive deck. We just want to get out early and start smashing face. So we included all 4 of the signets, right? Really efficient ramp on turn 2. We then have Fellow War Stone and the Diamond Cycle. I really like the Diamond Cycle here because honestly by turn 4 we want to be creating those dragons, and to do that we need to be really ramping on turn 2. Wayfarer's Bauble, another solid ramp option for turn 2. Then we have our long-term ramp with Mahadi Emporium Master. This one has an insane ceiling in the deck to create a lot of treasure tokens. Sifter of Skulls is also going to create us a lot of treasure tokens, not as much as Mahadi, but it can still pop off. Ganax Astral Hunter, another one that can get us a lot of treasure tokens, right? Because whenever a dragon enters the battlefield, we're going to net a treasure token, and we're going to be trying to create a lot of dragon tokens. Lastly, we have Removal. Goblin Bombardment is just going to be really useful to sacrifice all of our useless goblins that have already attacked. They've entered the battlefield last turn. They're useless to us, so we'll fling them at our opponents. Warstorm Surge Surge, a really good include for those giant dragons that are going to be entering the battlefield. Not to mention, we're creating a lot of tokens, so this is going to do a lot of damage on its own. Where Ancient's Tread, this one will only trigger off of our dragons, but it's worth the include because 5 damage to someone's face is 5 damage to someone's face. Negate, just really good counter spell. Go for the Throat. Cheap, efficient removal. Chaos Warp, again, just solid removal. It targets a permanent, which is really good. Feed the Swarm, it's pretty flexible and notably can hit those enchantments, which is pretty important, so that's good. And that's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about it, and I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, it would be pretty awesome if you guys subscribed and left a comment. It really helps me out.